I wanted to talk a little bit today about politics, but not really. I really want to talk about Jesus, but politics has been in our lives in America for many, many years. I mean, I came here in '75. The president was Gerald Ford. He just inherited the presidency from Richard Nixon, and then after Gerald Ford, there was Jimmy Carter and Iran problems, and after that, we had Ronald Reagan, and I remember in the last 4 years of his term, he started getting sick, and he wasn't, functioning very well. Then we had Bill Clinton, and then, for 8 years, and then there was all kinds of turmoil there, and then you had George Bush, and we had 9/11 and wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, and President Obama came on board, and then President Trump, and now we have a new president again, and in each one of those periods, there was turmoil and there was problems. But one thing that I noticed is that Christians, and I want to speak today to us Christians also started getting involved into politics a lot and taking sides, and it became kind of an obsessive kind of a thing. And I want to talk today not about politics, but about the purpose of Christianity and the purpose of who we are, our purpose on this planet and in this time. But in order to do that, we also need to look at a little bit at what's going on. At the time of Jesus, well, actually back at the time of Ezekiel, there is an interesting text in Ezekiel 22:25, which says, there is a conspiracy of her princes, these are the people who were ruling the land at the time, of her princes within her, like a roaring lion tearing its prey. God was talking to the city of Jerusalem. City of Jerusalem and the nation of Israel was governed by princes, by people, those people they were in charge. But God says that these people are like roaring lions tearing its prey. They devour people, take treasures and precious things, and make many widows within her. This is a long time before Jesus, in the time of Israel. And you already see politicians, and people who are in charge, they are destroying the land. They are taking stuff for themselves. They are using their power to enrich themselves and to be in charge and to dominate everybody. And you see this in all of the countries throughout the centuries. I came from what they described as a socialist country, and even there they said everything for the people. We're going to take care of the people, But the ruling class always had it better than the rest of us, And you can go to any country of the world and you will find the same thing. There are very few examples of a country, the United States is one of those, where people had it pretty good because the government was more or less under control. But even here, now we are becoming so obsessed with the politics, and even here politicians can be corrupt and cruel and, self-serving in this country, of both parties, of all kinds of parties. And, that's just the nature of politics. And when we get sucked into it, when we get obsessed with one or the other, then I think we lose sight of who we are as Christians. So this goes on. At the time of Jesus, there was a famous governor in the Palestine by the name of Pontius Pilate. And Pontius actually is his last name. Ponti family, Italian last name, I guess, Ponti family, and then Pilate, that's not his first name. We don't know his first name. Pilate translates as somebody who handles javelin really good, so we don't know really what that says about this man. We don't know much about him and his family and the background and all of that. We do know that one of his cousins actually murdered Julius Caesar. So we know that his family, Ponti family, was very influential all over the Roman Empire at the time. But he was the governor of Judea at this time. And I want to share with you the story of Jesus and how politicians think then and how politicians think today. And then we want to talk about what our purpose is. Then the Jewish leaders took Jesus from Caiaphas to the palace of the Roman governor. You remember that story? Everybody, right? Jesus is arrested. The Jewish priests and the Jewish leaders, they can question Jesus. They can arrest him, but they don't have the authority to execute him because Jewish land is under the Roman occupation. If they wanted to kill somebody, they had to get the approval from the governor, Roman governor. So that's why they're going to Pilate, because he's the only one that can give them the stamp of approval to go ahead and crucify Jesus or kill Jesus, execute him. They did not have that power. So they took Jesus and they interrogated him themselves, and they were upset at Jesus because he was claiming to be the king of the Jews, and he was claiming that he was going to destroy the temple and then raise it again. They didn't realize that he was talking about his own self, his own body, you see. And they just were not happy with Jesus. They wanted to get rid of him because he was gaining a large popularity among the people, and they wanted to be the ones to teach the people and to tell them what's what. And this is how it is even today. This is why all of these different denominations and religions fight amongst each other. And everybody is right. We are right because we have the truth. But in reality, a lot of these churches and organizations, they want to be the one to tell the people how it is and how to live it, how to behave it. And they don't want any competition. So at the time of Jesus, these religious leaders, they did not want the competition from Jesus. That's one thing. And he was interfering with their authority amongst the people. So they wanted to get rid of him. So now they take him to take Jesus from Caiaphas, who was one of the priests, to the palace of the Roman governor. By now it was early morning, and to avoid ceremonial uncleanness, they did not enter the palace. You remember, Jews believed that if they had contact with a Gentile, then they are unclean. If you're unclean, you cannot attend services in the temple. So here they are. Look at this. Look at this. Here they are scheming how to kill Jesus. But they are worried about this ceremonial law that says if you touch another human being who is not of your faith, you are not clean anymore and you can't go to church anymore. Look at the hypocrisy. You see, today, this morning, I'm talking to you about the hypocrisy that exists in the churches and in the politics. It's there. You cannot get rid of it, you see. And they did not enter. They just sent Jesus in there. And why? Because they wanted to be able to eat the Passover, go to the temple, participate in the church services. I mean, this was the hypocrisy of the highest order. You could not be any more hypocritical than that. I mean, you are planning in your heart to murder this guy. So Pilate came out to them and asked, "What charges are you bringing against this man?" So Pilate, he's the governor. This guy, he knows his business. This guy is in charge. He controls their whole land. He has the army at his disposal. I mean, he's the man. If he wants to kill somebody, he can kill them. He's the law. He's the ultimate law of the land. And he despises these Jewish people. There are many historians that say that Pilate was very anti-Semitic, that he did not, that he was prejudiced against the Jews. You see, so he despises them. He despises their religion. He thinks they're backwards. And you can tell how he talks to them that he does not have much respect for these religious leaders, high priests and the leaders of the church. So Pilate comes out and says, "What charges do you have against this man?" And look at how they respond in verse 30. "If he were not a criminal," they replied, "we would not have handed him over to you." In other words, take our word. You see, this kind of thing happens in religion and politics all the time. Take my word. I speak for God. Would I do something horrible? I wouldn't do something horrible. You know, we are bringing this guy to you because he's a criminal. Take our word for it. So these guys are lying. They are just trying to get Jesus killed as soon as they can. You see, and Pilate says, well, take him yourselves and judge him by your own law. He says if he is a criminal, because you can judge him by your own law. You can't kill him, but you can judge him for different things in your own law. But you can't kill him. So he's now putting it back on them. This is what politicians do. You see, they take the ball and then they give it to you and put it in your corner. So now you got to deal with it. And we see this in American politics all the time. If President Trump does something, then the people who don't like him are immediately going to say, they'll phrase it in such a way that he looks like a bad person. If President Biden does something they'll take it immediately the same, the other side will now do it. You see, they'll take it and they'll phrase it in such a way as to make this person a bad person, an evil person. And politicians do this all the time. Oh, it's not my fault, it's not the fault of my party, it's these guys. You see, it's Nancy Pelosi, it's Mitch McConnell. They're always putting the ball into the other guy's corner, and they are blaming the other guy. So you can see this with Pilate. Pilate says, okay, you deal with it. It's your problem. It's not my problem. This is just what happens in politics all the time. Nobody wants to take responsibility for their actions. Nobody wants to be the person to say, I own this. It's always put the blame on somebody else. And this is a perfect example. But look at what they answer. They say, but we have no right to execute anyone, they replied. This took place to fulfill what Jesus had said about the kind of death he was going to die. Jesus knew that they were going to crucify him. He knew that they were going to kill him. I mean, they're coming to the political leader. They're coming to the government. They want to kill the guy, but they're not presenting any charges against him. And now this politician, he has to deal with this problem. So Pilate then went back inside the palace, summoned Jesus and asked him, are you the king of the Jews? Which, by the way, is not something that you can punish by that, because anybody can say, I'm the king. A lot of crazy people out there in the countryside, right? And Jesus says to him, is that your own idea, Jesus asked, or did others talk to you about me? And look at Pilate, what he says. Am I a Jew? You can see the contempt. He's like, why am I here? Why do I have to deal with these people? I could be in Rome partying, with my own people. Instead, I got to deal with these crazy people. He says, am I the Jew? Your own people and chief priests handed you over to me. What is it that you have done? You can see that he's getting frustrated. You can see that he's bothered by this situation and doesn't really want to resolve it. And I think it's true of politics always. Try calling your congressman or sending them a letter, or your senator. See how far you get. It's this idea, I don't want to be bothered with your problems. Why do I have to deal with this? And Jesus says to him, my kingdom is not of this world. If anything we learn as Christians, it's this. My kingdom is not of this world. You can love the country and you can love the people and all of that stuff, but my kingdom is not of this world, Jesus says. If it were, my servants would fight to prevent my arrest by the Jewish leader. But now my kingdom is from another place. And Pilate says, you are a king then, aren't you? Jesus is telling us, my friends, me and you, that the country that we live in is not his kingdom. I think we should vote. I think we should have political views. I think we should participate in our society according to our consciousness, according to what we see is right and wrong. If you feel that you need to vote for a certain person, go ahead and do it. I'm not one of those people to say, have nothing to do with politics. To the contrary, we should be a part of the society in which we live. And we should be thankful to God for the democracy that we have, because a lot of countries don't have it. So I think we should participate in it. I don't think that we should become obsessed with it. You see, and I don't want us in this church to become obsessed with it. I want us in this church to gather together. I don't care, left, right, whatever, libertarian, I don't care. We participate, but we are not obsessed with it. We are obsessed with something else. We are obsessed with the purpose that Jesus has for us. as Christians. And I believe strongly that in this church you can have people who are very much politically minded to the right, and you can have people who are very much politically minded to the left. And they can come together and work for the community, and work for the poor, and work for the advancement of the gospel, because it's two separate things. And we don't have to talk about politics. And we don't have to talk about all of this stuff that divides us. I loved the days when I came to this country, and I repeat this many times. I say, my uncle told me, Gordon, in America, people don't talk about politics or religion. And back then it was true. You could work with the guy next to you, in a factory. Back then we had a lot of factories in Chicago. And you'd never know who they voted for. Nobody ever talked about it. It was nobody's business. And you didn't know to which church he went. And we all got along, and on Sundays we went and played softball and soccer and all of that stuff, and went to Bears game and Cubs game and Sox games and so on. So yes, it can be done. We can live in a society, have our own political views, and still get along with our friends and relatives. And that leads me to another point. If your relationships have been broken in the last 4 years, go back and repair them. There is no reason for sons and mothers not to talk to each other because they have different political opinions. Go back and repair that. Go back and fix that. It's not right for us to fight with our loved ones because of politics. That's not who we are as Christians. Jesus says, my kingdom is from another place. And Pilate says, well, you're the king then. And Jesus answers him and says, you say that I am king. In fact, the reason I was born and came into the world is to testify to the truth. Everyone on the side of truth listens to me. People talk a lot about the truth. People on the right say, we have the truth. People on the left say, well, we have the truth. And then you have the media, and they kind of turn everything around, on both sides. They just put their own spin on it. Well, the only truth that we as Christians should pay attention to is the truth of Jesus. That's the only truth that we should care about. And that's what Jesus says. Jesus says, I was born to be a king, and I came into this world to testify to this truth. Jesus is the king. That's the truth. Jesus is coming back. That's the truth. You see, all of this other, and I said this many times in sermons, everything else that we see around us today, here, in the country, in the politics, that's not the reality. Reality is God's kingdom. This is all temporary stuff that's all going to disappear. I mean, I'm in this country 45 years. Numerous presidents have come and gone. Political parties have changed and shifted their opinions on all kinds of issues. What's today is not going to be here tomorrow. He's just constantly in the state of flux. It changes all the time. God doesn't change. Loving your neighbor doesn't change. And you can see Pilate, he's frustrated. He says, what is the truth? What is truth? You know what this shows to me when he says what is truth? It shows to me that every human being is searching. Every human being, whether they're on the left or right, whether they are a swastika-wearing Nazi or a libertarian Bernie Sanders follower, every human being, deep inside in their heart, they want to know what's right, what's the truth. And maybe they have their own version of it at the present time, but deep inside, this guy, he says, what is truth? What is truth? So you have here a governor, a Roman soldier. This is a man who is squarely standing on his 2 feet. This is a man who knows his stuff. This is not somebody you can just, shift around and manipulate any way you want to. This is a person who knows his business. That's why he's in that position. He's a grown man with his own opinions, with developed character. He's not somebody you just mess with. And he says, what is truth? With this, he went out again to the Jews, gathered there and said, I find no basis for a charge against Jesus. You guys got nothing, he's saying. What do you got? Give me something better. I have no basis. And then verse 39, slide number 13. But it is your custom for me to release to you one prisoner at the time of the Passover. Passover, big holiday in the Jewish land, and the Roman government agreed to release one of their prisoners back to them. Do you want me to release the king of the Jews? He's making fun of them now. He's pushing their buttons too, and this is what politicians do. He's pushing their buttons. He wants to provoke them. He wants to make them mad. He wants to humiliate them. You see? And he's like, I don't want to deal with this, so hey guys, you want me to release the king of the Jews? Is that who you want? And look at their answer. They shouted back, no, not him. Give us Barabbas. Now Barabbas had taken part in an uprising. Barabbas was a man who was a rebel. He took part in an uprising against the Roman Empire. And they said, we want him. Give us Barabbas. And you know how this story ended, right? This story ended with a politician going along with a crowd and not doing the right thing. This was 2,000 years ago. And they put so much pressure on this guy, and they even threatened him. I'm not going to go into all of that. They even threatened him that they were going to report him to the Caesar, that he was not loyal enough to the Rome if he let Jesus go. And in his heart, the Bible tells us, he did not want to crucify Jesus. And yet he relented. For political purposes and political reasons, he said, okay, you can have him. And at that point, the soldiers took charge of Jesus. And you know what happens next. They dragged him out there, and they brutally murdered him in front of thousands of people. That's politics, folks. That's how politics works. If we as Christians put our trust in politicians of any sort, we are going to be disappointed. They are not going to make life perfect for us. Only God can make life perfect for us. Only Jesus can make life perfect for us. And you know what else? We, each one of us, we have the responsibility to make our life good. We have the responsibility to work and to save money and to be careful about how we spend it and to be careful about our decisions so we don't do anything stupid. You see, because we can make our life better if we focus on it. But if you focus on Fox and CNN and all of that stuff, you're wasting your time. That's not our purpose. Our purpose is not politics. Our purpose is to live by the Spirit of Jesus Christ. And I want to set it in front of us now at the beginning of the year. So as the year goes by, as the weeks go by, so that we have a guide as to how we should be living our life and what our purpose is. Galatians 6, 1-10 is a perfect example of who we as Christians should be and what we should worry about. Brothers and sisters, if someone is caught in a sin, you who live by the Spirit should restore that person gently. So, step number one in our purpose as Christians, if you see that somebody is sinning, and by the way, who is sinning? Just about everybody. World is in the bondage to sin. The whole world. People are tempted all the time, and I'm not just talking about politicians, but all of us. Tempted all the time to do something that's not right. And if you see somebody who is suffering and who is in the bondage of sin, Paul tells us, hey, let's restore. So our job as Christians is to restore. To restore people in your families. To restore people in our neighborhood. To restore people we love. How many people we all know who are suffering out there under the bondage of sin? How many young people do we know who are using meth and drugs and just not on the right path, and they're going to be destroyed if somebody doesn't restore them. We all know that. How many people out there we know who are drowning their sorrows in a bottle every day? Pornography. All kinds of weird, crazy things out there in this world. Money. Greed. He says, our job is to restore. We as Christians, we're not here to elect different people to positions of power. That's not our primary purpose. Our primary purpose is to restore those that Satan has attacked and taken into his bondage and servitude. So how do we do that? Prayer, kind word, helping people when they need. Just sometimes, sometimes people give up. They give up and they go down the path of destruction, and they gave up because everybody else gave up on them. Everybody gave up on them. Their parents, their school, their neighborhood, their boss. And they got nothing to lose anymore. Sometimes just a moment of attention. You attending to that person and showing a little bit of an interest in their suffering. Because it's suffering, really. May turn them around and may restore them. And put them on a different path. So that's our purpose. Our purpose is to restore. But he also says, watch yourselves that you also may not be tempted. So be careful. Step number 2, Debbie, carry each other's burdens. So restore people, carry each other's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ. If anyone thinks they are something when they are not, they deceive themselves. What does it mean to carry each other's burdens? It means to care. It means to care. We buried Sergio yesterday, 46 years old. And we went to the funeral home, Debbie and I, and the casket was open and his mother was weeping the whole time. And the burden that his mom and his sisters and the rest of the family, nieces and nephews and his daughter and granddaughter are going to have. He tells us, carry each other's burdens. Pick up the phone and ask your brother or your sister, how are you doing? Are you okay? How can I help? I'm praying for you. It's not always about giving money to people. Sometimes it's just that phone call, a card. Hey, I've been thinking about you. Our purpose. That's our purpose. That's reality. That's the kingdom of God. You see? I asked these ladies, I said, we're not going to have church today. Would you still be willing to come and sing for us? And they said, yeah. Why? Because they care. They care, and thank you, ladies, for struggling through all of the, technical issues. But that's what it means to care, you see. To care that the people in this audience and the people who are watching online, that they get some music and that they get lifted up. That's what it means to care. And we all can do that, to carry each other's burdens and to not think that we are something that we are not, something special. I don't need to care about other people. Who cares about them? No. You and I, we are servants. We're not something special. God put us here to serve others, to serve the humanity in its entirety. Each one should test their own actions. Look at purpose number 3 here. Test your own actions. You know what politics does? Let me tell you what politics does. When we become obsessed with politics, we start pointing a finger at the other guy. And then it's all their fault. It's all their fault. And those people who voted for them, it's all their fault. Paul says, test your own actions. I am responsible for my actions. So let's stop being obsessed with things that lead us to blame others, and let's look at ourselves. Then, when you look at your own actions, you can take pride in yourself alone without comparing themselves to someone else. How important it is to be self-aware and to understand who I am. You know, it's easy to look at another person and find faults with them. That's easy. Anybody can do that. But it's hard to look in the mirror. It's hard to assess my character and my motivations and my actions towards other people. Because then I need to be honest, right? And I need to be honest to the point of saying, well, man, I was a crappy person right there. And we don't like that. But that's a sign of maturity. That's a sign of true Christian. Somebody who is able to look at themselves and say, okay, I'm going to be responsible for my own actions. For each one should carry their own load. Nevertheless, the one who receives instruction in the Word should share all good things with their instructor. So this now tells us when we start experiencing good things and blessings of God and testimonies. That's why I said to the ladies when we were having problems with the music, give a testimony. Share with others what God has done for you. So when you're looking at this chapter, you see the purpose. Restoration and serving others and looking at my own character and sharing with others the blessings that God has put and given us and put in our lives. So that's my purpose for this next year. It's not about what some guy in Washington is going to do. And then he concludes with the words, do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows. God cannot be mocked. What are you and I sowing? Are we sowing discord? Are we sowing hate? Are we sowing things that are going to produce animosity in other people? Or are we sowing peace? Are we sowing love? Are we sowing mercy and justice and service? That's what we need to be sowing. Debbie, put up the next slide, please. Whoever sows to please their flesh, from the flesh will reap destruction. What is flesh? Flesh is this earth. Jesus says, I'm not of this. This is not my kingdom. Flesh here in this verse, what does it represent? It represents all the things of this earth. Money, power, comforts, pleasure, all of the things that are temporary and that are going to disappear. If you invest in all of that stuff into this kingdom, it's all going to be taken away from you. It's not going to last. You can have the most beautiful mansion on the ocean worth $20 million. It's all going to disappear and it's not going to be translated into the next world. It's going to stay on this planet. You can have hate in your heart and you can have politics in your heart, and that's also going to stay on this earth. But if you have love, if you have good deeds, if you have mercy, if you have service to the others, black and white, recorded, that goes into the next world. That resume follows you into the eternity. Everything else stays on this earth. So, Paul is giving us really a clear understanding of what our purpose and mission is. Whosoever sows to please their flesh, from the flesh will reap destruction. Whoever sows to please the Spirit, from the Spirit will reap eternal life. So when you get up in the morning and when I get up in the morning, we need to live by the Spirit of God. We need to live by the Spirit of Jesus. We need to ask God, Lord, I'm going to be in this crazy world today and I'm going to be confronted by all kinds of temptations. I'm going to be confronted by all kinds of weird people. I'm going to be confronted by all kinds of views, left, right, political. I'm going to be confronted with all kinds of violence and anger. greed. But I need your spirit this morning because I want to live by your spirit. When people provoke me, I want to respond like Jesus would respond. When I'm tempted to do something bad, I want to do what Jesus would do. I went to a coffee shop yesterday morning, and I just walked in and wasn't paying attention, and a guy comes up to the counter, and he gives the lady a wallet, and he says, this wallet was over there on the floor. And I looked, and the wallet was this thick. It was just packed with money. And I looked at that guy, and I said, man, God bless you. I'm glad you found it and not somebody else. He could have been tempted to take that wallet. Nobody saw it. You get up in the morning and you ask the Lord, Lord, let me live right. Whether people see me or whether they don't see me. Let me live right at my work. Let me live right on the drive to my work. Let me live right with my kids. How many people come home and they're mad at their kids? They're mad at their wife or their husband because they had a rough day. When we used to do a radio show at 5:30 every day, and God willing, one day we'll go back. And I would always say, people, if you're in your car, Richard, you did shows with me, you remember probably, I would say, if you're on your way back home now, I need you to just, in your mind, stop for a few seconds and adjust your attitude so when you get your home, you are good to your wife and your kids and your husband. How many people? Because they're not living by the Spirit of God. And if you're not living by the Spirit of God, then the spirit of evil comes into you, and you are then susceptible to all kinds of bad things. And then I want to close with the last words that are so appropriate. Talking about our purpose for 2021. Let us not become weary in doing good. It's easy to become weary in doing good. Why are we feeding these homeless people every Wednesday? They're not going to change their lives. Well, maybe one of them will. I don't know. Why am I constantly giving to church? Is it changing anything in the world? Why am I constantly, helping my neighbor or whoever? He says, do not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. In this church, we're not going to give up on doing good. In this church, we're not going to divide ourselves alongside the political fault lines. We're not going to divide ourselves alongside the conservative or liberal. We're not going to divide along the lines of contemporary or traditional, none of that stuff. We're all human beings. We're all brothers and sisters. In this church, we're going to love each other, and we're going to continue to do good. And yes, I asked Richard to tell you about our financial situation. But you know what? Even with all of this, what he said, we still paid all of our bills. We still did. And we're going to do good, and we're going to do better this year. I know. I have a feeling that God is going to bless us again, you see. Therefore, as we have opportunity, let us do good to all people, especially to those who belong to the family of believers. So we got to take care of each other. We have to show compassion. We have to call on people in our church family and just to worry about them, make sure they're doing okay. But he also says we have to, whenever we have the opportunity, let us do good to all people. Maybe even people that you don't like. People of different, background. Think about the people that you like the least. They're included in that word, all. You may not like them at all, but they are included in that. And that's our job. That's our mission. That's our purpose as Christians. And I hope and I know that we are going to do everything to accomplish this purpose in this church. I thank you for coming.